All right, what's happening, my mathletes? That's right, Mr. Muscarella coming at you. And in this video, we are going to take a look at some student work for law of sines and law of cosines. So let's go ahead and take a look at some best practices that we want to make sure we do when we're showing our work. Now here we're going to take a look at student A, and I love what student A has done here in this first part. And here I'm going to highlight a couple spots just to kind of show what I'm looking at here. Now this first part right here, look at it, this is so beautiful. They just write down that ratio, that's great. Now you could also flip those around, that's okay too. But they set up that law of sines perfectly, and then they figure out what G is. And I love how in this next step, there's like G equals, this piece right here, and then they continue on by just doing the calculation. They're calculating, coming up with about 218.39. So that's perfect. Love it. Very well organized and very well done, student A. Now, when they go on, and this is one of the things I was like, ooh, all right, so we got to take a look at this here. When they go on here to this piece, I want you to see if you can notice the linkage error. So we're going to look here at their work going right along this section. Do you see where they make a mistake? They set everything up perfectly. So let's take a look there. This setup is great. But then right here, I'm going to highlight it so we can see this right here in this little spot. They've got this little equal sign right here. So this is what's called a linkage error, because they're saying all of these quantities are equal, and they are not. So be really careful when you show your work not to say quantities are equal that are not. If they would not have had that equal sign there, that would have been perfect, just like they did in the previous part. So great work in part A, but in this other part down here, they made a linkage error. So be careful about that for your mathematical writing. Now, speaking of mathematical writing, check these guys out. Student B and student C here. These guys do a great job. So let's kind of make sure we can see all the pieces here. So student B and student C, they both go through the same process. And then I want you to zoom in here. So let's take a look at just this part for student B. They have arc sine and they have 1.5. And then their calculator says error, or it might give you a domain error. So there's a lot of different things that could come up on that. And student B says that, and student C, they're just like, oh, okay, undefined. But what I want you to notice here are both of these values that they used inside the parentheses for arc sine. And if you think about those values as it relates to the sine curve, remember sine is going to float down here between -1 at its lowest and +1 at its highest. Now, when we're dealing with arc sine, remember we've got that domain restriction. So anything between -π/2 and π/2. And when you take a look at that, again, the lowest possible value for the y and the highest possible value for the y, it tops out at 1 and bottoms out at -1. So anytime you get a value, when you're plugging that into the arc sine formula and you just use that decimal approximation, if you notice that that value is more than 1 or less than -1, yeah, you're going to get a domain restriction error there. So great job, great work on that. Love it. So great job on that, student B and student C. And then let's take a look at student D here, shall we? As in, let's go. Now with student D, I want you to just kind of, take your time, be careful. So let's kind of zoom in on a couple of pieces here. They do a lovely job, and I love how they're showing their work here. They're like, okay, cosine of K, so this part right here, awesome, love it. And they do all those calculations right there. So a couple things you could do to make sure that you're not making an error when you plug things into the calculator. So the first thing I want to take a look at is when you go to type this into the calculator, right? You want to be kind of careful here, because when you do that, there's a lot of places students could make mistakes, so be careful not to make them. So when you do this first part, like, okay, you get this decimal, no big deal. So rather than, truncate that or use that, go back up into your calculator and just grab that, and that's what I want you to take the arc cosine of, and then you'll end up with about 112 point blah, 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 blah. But since this is a calculator thing, right, this is a calculator piece, you could actually go down here where they have this line K equals all of that. You could actually write this like this. And this would maybe be a little bit easier, and you'd have less chance of making a mistake in there. You could put K equals, and then you do your arc cosine, right? So you do your arc cosine, and then this whole blop over here, right? This whole fraction that they had, the 50 squared plus 63 squared minus 94 squared, etc. You put all of that in the TI graphing calculator, and you would end up with the same thing. So you could actually have that look like this, And then when you put that in there and Shazam, hit your enter, you'll get the same thing. But again, because there's a lot of button pushing, just be really careful to not make a careless mistake when you enter something, and you'll be good. All right, so I just want to highlight those couple of things. You guys did real well on that. But again, just pay attention to notation and your calculations and everything. You're going to rock on this stuff. So thank you guys very much for watching. Make your great day as always, because there's simply no good reason not to. Get out there and be awesome, and I'll catch up with you later. Peace out.